Let's talk high-speed rail now. I mean, it's still a long way off, but the worry about the impact of high-speed rail passing through the Staffordshire countryside, it's gathering pace. This week, the Church of England opposed the plans because it says construction would destroy burial sites. Now, the route wouldn't pass through any burial grounds in Staffordshire, but the Bishop of Stafford, the Rt Reverend Geoff Annas, is still worried about the impact on communities and one of the area's churches. And as always, nice to have you in to talk about anything, but on this particular subject, we're talking about HS2, we're talking about the impact on the area and churches. What are your main concerns?
If I can just clarify one thing, the Church of England hasn't actually opposed the plans, but what it's asked is that due consideration be given to the impact that HS2 is going to have. And certainly that's my concern throughout Staffordshire, but particularly obviously my area, North Staffordshire. Having just come from the county show a couple of weeks ago, constantly I was encountering farmers who are very worried indeed about the impact that's going to have on their own farms. We've got some fantastic soil in North Staffordshire, but it's not just where the new rail is going to go, it's also the impact of digging out and what they do with the stuff they dug out and where that goes, and it's going to be ruinous for many farms. From a church's point of view, there are 3 churches in our part of North Staffordshire that are going to be affected. St Mary Ingastry and St Mary Swinnerton will have moderate impact, but the one where there's going to be a very high impact is St Leonard's Marston. It's a tiny little church. It's got a churchyard that's still open, but it's very much loved by the people of that community, and there's going to be a massive 8-metre high embankment put right behind it. And these trains are going to be hurtling by. It's going to be devastating for them. There's the vibration, there's the noise, there's all the disruption during the actually construction of it all, and it's going to be a real blight on that community. And I think that there's something far more insidious. You said that it's not going to happen for many years. There's quite a few of us, including all of our MPs, who hope that it's never going to happen and that alternative ways can be found to bring more capacity. It's the capacity issue that's the key one. It's not the time factor. Many in the business community say that actually, an hour and 40 minutes from Stafford to Euston is perfectly reasonable. And now with their laptops and everything, they can get a coffee and do some work on the train, and they don't really want it much faster than that. They're quite happy with it. So
capacity is the main issue.
Capacity is the main issue, and there are other things I think, certainly the MPs have pointed out that could happen to increase capacity without all of this having to happen.
If we say that it is going to happen, let's just imagine that this is more about the route, and of course moving the route, you're always going to impact on something. You can tweak it one way or the other, and then somebody else has an objection.
Well, absolutely. I think that the line the MPs have taken, and it's certainly one that I would endorse, is that if this is going to happen, and we have to admit that all 3 parties in Westminster seem to be supporting it at the moment, although of course we have got an election coming up next year. But if this second phase happens, at the very least we want to ensure that we have a stop in Stoke or somewhere near Stoke so that we get some benefit from it. Otherwise, this whole community of North Staffordshire is going to become a backwater, and that's a big worry. But it's more the blight that's happening already. Although, we're talking about another 10, 15 years, there's no doubt at all that in the communities affected by the plans, people are already selling up and moving out.
Or putting things on hold, perhaps. Because HS2 is saying they work closely with the communities, the landowners, and the National Farmers Union. They're attempting to keep disruption to a minimum.
Well, they say that, but you can't help but when people move out of a community, it drains the lifeblood out of that community. Unfortunately, we've seen that all too often. If you go up into the peaks, particularly some of our villages there, the schools have had to close because there are no longer the young children. People setting out can't afford to buy properties there, so they're built up for weekend cottages and all this sort of thing, and it does take the life out of that community.
So of course the compensation is going to be a long way away as well.
Absolutely.
But you're saying the effects are being felt now by people,
and the compensation won't take account of that.
What about the burial sites? We mentioned there's no burial sites in Staffordshire affected, but how much does the fact that other areas will be, does that concern you?
There are 3 big burial sites. In fairness, they've all been closed for many years. There's 2 actually in London, one at Euston, one at St Pancras. That puzzles me. Why on earth this is planned to go into Euston when the channel, the other rail that takes you across to France and everything goes from St Pancras. I mean, you would have thought that it would have gone into St Pancras, so you could at least get a through train. And
of course, there was meant to be a link between the two, but I think that's been scaled back as well.
I think it has, yeah. So you've got visions of all these people having to get off the train at Euston and then sort of dash down the road to St Pancras with their bags, which is
I think originally
crazy.
We could get on a train in Manchester and go straight through to Europe.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. But as it is, that won't be happening. But there are two big graveyards there that it affects, and then I think there's one other on the route of the HS1 route. And all that the church has asked, which I think is perfectly reasonable, is that due consideration be given to the exhumation and reburial of all these remains. Quite where they're all going to be reburied, of course, I don't know. But I doubt that there are any actual living relatives of the people who've been buried there. But obviously, if there are, that's going to be quite distressing for them.
What's the answer? I mean, if it doesn't follow the proposed route, somebody's land somewhere is going to be affected, even if it's not in.
Well, the answer is actually to scrap the whole thing and actually look at the capacity and upgrading existing railways. And I think there are quite a few of us who feel that should happen. But if they insist on going ahead of this, I mean, it's just so ironic. I mean, it's going to ruin Whitmore Woods, which is an ancient woodland. I've got a church out in Norbury where the parishioners there have to scrub the church down every weekend before they can hold worship there because of these bats, which of course we're not allowed to do anything about because it's a protected species. So we have to do things like that, and yet you can destroy ancient woodland. It seems to be terribly wrong to me.
But interesting, you say at the start that the Church of England's position at the moment isn't to oppose the
well, it's not. No, because they accept that if it's necessary for growth and investment of businesses, and certainly, I mean, yes, if it's going to bring new businesses in and invest in the Midlands, then fantastic. But I got grave doubts about that. As one businessman said to me, well, it means that people are going to go quicker from here into London. But are people in London really going to be coming out here to work here? And I mean, there are great cities up here where it takes ages to get. I mean, if you go from Manchester to Leeds or something like that, the linking there, it just takes hours. You think that they'd be improving sort of links there, and I don't know.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there, but always nice to talk to you, and thanks for coming in